thing down here.
That election, yeah.
Yeah.
We're live now.
Yeah.
Hello. Good evening. I'm John from Broadsheet, and you're very welcome to Tomorrow Tonight. We're very honoured to be joined by Derek Mooney, public affairs consultant, Broadsheet columnist, and Fianna Fáil spanner in the works.
That's certainly one way of putting it, yeah, but we'll let that one go, yeah.
Okay. How are you, Derek?
Would you believe I'm in great form?
Great. Yeah, you look very well.
I was out today. I was down and kind of got out a little bit and got out and about, and had a coffee outdoors.
Great.
Just put a potted around and a few little things to do. Most enjoyable and just a glorious day. But I mean, the weather would do you the very good. So.
Oh, yeah. And you got a bit of the sun, I see.
No, that's just rushing back in. that's somebody else using the lift and having to use the stairs anyway.
So everybody today was moaning about all the Salt Hill people and
yeah, and you can say, and we at Salt Hill people, you can talk about what happened in Stephen's Green. You can talk about the canals. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a taxi driver, and he said he's been in and out, and he said the canals most evenings said that they're fairly busy and lots of people there. But he also makes the point, which is people there very calmly, but they're groups of people. And yeah, I'm sure if you went down, I'm sure if somebody from Neffers went down with a 2-meter ruler, would find that's not the distance between everyone or between groups of people. But people are sitting there, being very convivial. Yeah. Okay, they're leaving a lot of rubbish behind you. Wish to God they didn't do that. But apart from that.
Yeah, but if there were bins.
Well, that's actually, I don't know where I saw it. I saw it on Twitter earlier saying, which is when the Dublin City's the litter management plan was put together. There were 5,000 bins. Then went down to barely over 4,000, and now it's just a little over 3,000.
Well, that's your bottles. I mean, they're very neatly piled. I saw the bottles. They're people.
Well, I'm not too sure. I'm sure people have done that afterwards. The rest of them, and that I know. And I know talking to residents and talking to people down there. The rest of us, and there's been for years. There's been a great canal group of people, kind of local residents and others who clean up the canals on a regular basis, etc. But the point of it is in terms of, look, people want to gather, people want to go in. And when I live here now, I know I was talking to friends of mine who live just down the road in Bray, and they were saying, listen, Bray seafront and the promenade, etc., was absolutely thronged on Saturday and Sunday. But it was thronged in a way that any other time of the year you'd be delirious to see it. This is brilliant. This is great for business. There's so many people around. There's families there. There's people going here, etc. And within that, I think people are still trying to do their best, but they have decided, I mean, I don't think it's a big secret that if you were able to, in a position, if you're 3 or 4 floors up, you can look around and look into the back garden and say, oh, there's a barbecue there and there's 3 or 4 people there. So I don't know. I think it's a realization that no matter what the chief medical officer says, no matter what other people say, particularly as more people are becoming vaccinated, and I have a date for my own vaccination now. I know when I'm going to be vaccinated, and it's not too far off. So when all of these things, that people are going to start moving around, and people want to move and want to do this, they see the end in sight. And I think there's a degree to which what is government action going to echo that? I think there might be a view among civil servants saying, well, look, people have gone too far ahead where we want them to go. And if we go another step, they'll go 2 steps forward. So let's go 1 step back. You go, no, this isn't the way the public psyche works. It is that old, that French radical, which is, there go my people, I must follow them, I am their leader. People got to understand that the public have moved on this one.
Yeah.
And Middle Ireland has moved on this. This isn't just young people. This isn't just teenagers. This isn't just people in their kind of wild child or anything like that. These are normally everyday people from all over parts of Dublin and all over parts of Wicklow and wherever else. Yeah. So just get with it that public have decided, because they're seeing stuff on television, they're informing themselves, and they've made decisions based on this.
Yeah. Or they see Texas, maybe Florida. Texas and Florida almost fully opened up.
They are, yeah. No, I'm not always sure that America is the best example for everyone, though. In fairness, I think there has been maybe a kind of a barely one-dimensional portrayal of the governor of Florida and what he's been doing there, because I think a lot of this stuff actually does stand up to a bit more than appears on the outside. I think people are looking far closer to home. They're looking at the UK, they're looking at Northern Ireland, the UK, and there was another further opening up again today. So, look, we have to see. Now, I made a comment earlier, which is the government is trying to tell us that we're only a couple of weeks behind what's happening in the UK. at the moment, we're vaccinating people from 60 to 65, and Northern Ireland are vaccinating people between 35 and 39. So we're either a couple of weeks behind or we're 26 years behind. I don't know. Pay your money and take your choice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the delayed rollout at least gives us a chance to look at the effects of the vaccine.
Well. By the way, there is enough numbers in the UK so we know what the effects of the vaccine are. There's enough people vaccinated. But I wouldn't be too worried about that. We should be concerned that we're still missing targets. And there are perfectly reasonable reasons for some of this. The Johnson & Johnson delay is a problem. AstraZeneca, no matter how many promises they make, just seem to have a real difficulty hitting the targets. But Pfizer is by a country mile doing really, really well. And if you look at the app, and even the COVID app seems to be always at least 3 or 4 days behind where the curve is on this stuff. And if you look at the what I think of the million plus, I can't remember. I think we're just over 1 million first doses and whatever it is, 200. I can't remember. I meant to look at it there before I came on. 300,000, 400,000 second doses. Of those, nearly 900,000 are Pfizer. So we're good 75-80%.
Right.
Pfizer's arriving on time. So
okay. We'll come back to this. You're not alarmed by the stories about the effects of these vaccines in terms of blood clots and
because in terms of
menstrual cycles, all those kind of things. For women.
Look, we shouldn't be ignoring it. We shouldn't be just saying, "Oh, look, that's all it is," and just the rest. But in terms of, there is always a certain fail rate in these things. There is always a certain. In terms of the risks of catching COVID are still far greater than that of taking the vaccine.
Yeah.
And life is all about risk. There is how do you manage risk in your life? And I think that's the issue here. But I mean, again, we shouldn't be unaware of this. That certainly these are things that have to be watched. But I think most people are saying, look, if I get on a flight, I take a risk. But that's a perfectly acceptable risk. It's a norm. We know that 99.9% of people who get on planes get off the plane, etc. So I think people can make those decisions. People can and will make those decisions for themselves.
How was your mum? Did she get her?
Yeah, she has her second shot. Everything's grand. No reaction to the second shot, no more than the first one. Great. So she's in flying form. So that's it. And again, which is I think they've now kind of unlocked a little bit further. Not a huge spec. I mean, they had outdoor dining. I think there's a 30% capacity on indoor dining, given certain conditions. But in terms of where she, again, which is, I think I've made this point several times, which is in the particular region where she lives in Valencia. Valencia seems to have had the lowest infection rate of anywhere in Spain, and then even within Valencia, than where she is now, kind of Orwell and Murcia, seems to be again quite low. So
great. And you had a column today, excellent column, I thought, but it's about Scotland. So
it's about the Scottish
elections,
interest, which are 10 days off. I had an SNP mug which I was planning to use, but I can't find it now. Or I can't spot it. I first and foremost, I'm fascinated by Scottish politics. I believe by a country mile that Nicola Sturgeon is the most impressive political leader on these islands and further afield. But again, which is just think about it. The SNP has been in government consistently since 2007 in Scotland. This will be now its 4th term. Every opinion poll has it winning 50% of the vote. Maybe it'll get 48% of the day. Maybe it'll get 49% of the day. Some of the polls have had it up to 52, but I think 50 seems to be the balance. It is just an extraordinary performance. Proof that, number one, being in government at a time of COVID, at a time of a pandemic, does not have to mean diminishing popularity. Scotland has handled the whole process well. They handled the lockdowns well. No, they made very unpopular. They made decisions that were unpopular, but they were put across well. The communications by Nicola Sturgeon for the last 6, 9, 12 months have been extraordinary. But don't bear in mind that 2 months ago she had to say unseemly row, is putting it mild, with who she said between herself and Alex Salmond. And yes, here we are. That she is 28, 22, 23, 24%, depending which, ahead of the Tories and the Labour Party.
And is that, are you saying that like Fianna Fáil could be like the SNP?
Bizarrely, it's the other way around, which is, I know from talking to people in Scotland and the rest of it, for a lot of people in the SNP, they didn't model themselves on Fianna Fáil, but then the SNP looked at Ireland as a great example of how a small country can do well in Europe and have this outlook, etc.
Because they weren't around like last century, even, are they really?
No, the SNP's only really existed since the 30s, but even then it didn't matter. It wasn't until right from 1930 to 1970, 75.
Yeah.
It was barely getting 1% of the polls. It had a handful of councillors, and they were eccentric, to put it mild.
But it wasn't until the sort of noughties really till they got it.
No, it's actually from the naughty right for about 97 onwards with Alex Salmond that it started to go from 6, 10, 12, 17, 21. And then right into, so now that they're at 48, 50% for the last, most of the last decade.
And
45%, sorry, not 48.
They're unique. I mean, their Scottish independence, that's once that's achieved, you know.
Well, no, that's the thing about, like, that's what I think why I admire about the SNP. They're much broader the party than that. I mean, the two things that happened in the 70s was, number one, that they really took a hold of Scottish nationalism and Scottish independence and put a shape on it. And originally that was around the ownership of Scottish oil.
Yeah.
But they also developed a very large social democratic program. And they basically said, right, we're going to supplant the British Labour Party in Scotland. Now, for as long as Donald Dewar and some other real heavy hitters were there, it was difficult. But after Scottish independence and the emergence of the Scottish Parliament, within 8 years, they went from being the second party with 21, 22% to being the majority party and being a single party government within another 4 years of that again. That is just an extraordinary performance. It is an exceptionally well organized political party. It is an exceptionally professional political party. It's incredibly well structured.
But it sees its future within the EU. So
absolutely, very definitely. They definitely see that. I mean, they want Scottish independence, but they immediately want to get into into Europe.
And that could be the weak point, couldn't it? I mean,
but it's hard to say that's the weak point when they're getting 50%, and people have known this from the very start that that's what about. SNP campaigned very, very hard against Brexit, and they vote in Scotland, as far as I remember, was touching on 60% against Brexit, with maybe 57. I just off the top of my head, I can't remember which figure it is. So people are no illusions about where the SNP stands.
Sure. Would you join the EU now, though? I mean, that's the question.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay.
Now, but the question is not, would you join the EU now? The question is, okay, well, where do you see the EU going in 20 years' time or 30 years' time? For as long as it is some way a collection of EU member states, and it can become a confederation, but if it is, people talk about the United States of Europe. Now, we keep forgetting, by the way, that in America, states very much do have their own independence within that and do have their own clear identities. Now, you couldn't go from where we are to that point, because that would be a surrender of a great deal of national power and national authority.
Right.
So basically, but you have a pooling of it. But I think there is a point. So I think where people can have a proper argument about Europe is, well, what are the next steps of it? What are the next areas in this? Should there be more areas where there is kind of a common policy, etc., or whatever? I mean, and that's a legitimate argument to be had. And the problem in this country is we don't have that argument. We have the argument around the wrong stuff. We get ourselves all excited about this specific, or we just respond to one, two things, and we need to have that one. I don't believe in winding the clock back, but I think there is a point where you say, well, look, hang on a second, we can't have Europe every 10 years coming up with a new constitution or a new structure and a new step forward. There's a point where some of this has to bed down, and I think that's. And again, I think the fact of how Europe has handled the vaccines, etc., has put a lot of that back on the agenda.
Well, that's what I mean.
Is not necessarily everything we do on a European-wide basis works, and maybe we need to look at that.
I mean, they'd only have to look at Italy this week and just the general situation with the vaccines, and then Hungary, Poland.
They are, but I mean, which is, but I mean, but in fairness now, I think Europe has kind of very much got its act together in the last couple of weeks on the vaccines, and particularly through Pfizer, etc. Which are right, but I mean, but also some of this does actually lie with governments, because the other great trick in Europe and European politics for the last 2 to 3 decades, last 4 or 5 decades, to be honest, is that national governments take responsibility for the things that go right that Europe does, and when things go wrong, no, them in Brussels, Demons in Brussels, they're the responsible for it. There's a wee bit of both of that, and like Hungary has its own particular problems, which are not quite related to Europe. And by the way, in Hungary, there is a great deal of anti-European feeling in Hungary, and been building up, not because of any great structural difficulties with Europe, but because Europe is calling out the regime in Budapest and the Fidesz and oh God, the Prime Minister's name's going to my head now.
Orban.
Viktor Orban, calling out Viktor Orban for the muzzling of the media, for the buying up of media, for a great deal of interference in the courts, the same in Poland, etc. So there are other games at play in Hungary.
Oh yeah, no, I know, certainly, and Soros plays a role certainly in the Hungary situation as well.
There's a whole range of things. The rest of it, and Russia are playing footsie there as well. However, the other point about just finishing off on my own piece from today, which is, guys, but don't underestimate the degree to what happens in Scotland. If Scotland, I mean, if you look at there on the picture, which is, you can actually see that the SNP slogan is unambiguously about independence. Yeah. Scotland's decision is Scotland's alone. So it's unambiguously about independence. If they get a mandate, the next Scottish Parliament, okay, it's 10 days away from election. Next Scottish Parliament is almost guaranteed to have a majority in favour, not only of a referendum, but of independence. Not just based on the SNP, also based on Greens and a couple of others and the rest of it. So if in that case, the movement towards independence jumps forward a step. There will be a battle between Edinburgh and Westminster about the holding of a referendum. Yeah. The cohesion and the unity of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland starts to come under question. And that is going to be a greater pressure, and that is going to be a greater influence on unionist thinking than much of what's said here. Now, I have no problem with what's being said here. Some people are wringing their hands saying, oh my God, we have to stop talking about it. We must stop talking about it because we're only upsetting unionists. Unionists are not paying attention to what's happening here. They are seriously paying attention to what's happening in Edinburgh. They are seriously paying attention to what's happening in the UK, because they are looking to pledge allegiance to something that is slowly coming apart. Now by the way, and that has massive implications for us, because the one thing about negotiation is you cannot sit down and have a constructive talk or negotiation or a discussion with somebody who does not have confidence in their own position across the table from you. So it affects our relationship with unionism. But the idea that us talking about what might happen over the next decade is undoing it, is missing the point completely. We need to start preparing for what might happen over the next decade, because otherwise it's irresponsible.
And not just leave it to Sinn Féin, is that it?
It's not even leaving it to Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin, okay, I don't want to go in, I don't want to start picking around just right now. But the whole thing with Sinn Féin is Sinn Féin come at this with a difficulty. Unionism is not ready to listen to Sinn Féin on a lot of things. Of course. But when people in Dublin start saying, well, look, we got to look at this, we got to look and say, not merely how we accommodate unionism, but where does unionism sit in this? And I know from talking to, to call a spade a spade, I know from one or two conversations with Jim McCallaghan after he gave his speech in Sydney Sussex University, and I know from just kind of bits and conversations on Zoom calls and other bits and pieces I've been on, and he kind of said, listen, that he was amazed at the number of contacts he got subsequently from unionists saying, okay, yeah, explain to me what your thinking is on this. Now, they're not saying, by the way, we agree with you. They want to understand. I think he did a radio interview a couple of days later with a guy from the UUP, and he said, yeah, but you got to put this out to us. We got to see what you're talking about. Yeah. And we want to see, if you want us to convince us, well, put it on the table. They're not asking for the fate. They're not asking for the final shape of this, but they're going to say, well, what is it you're prepared? What are you prepared to discuss? What is it you're looking at? Well,
they feel if they even begin that conversation, then it's there's only one conclusion.
There's only one conclusion, that if they feel that their backstop, for the want of a better word, is gone, and if their backstop is our position, I mean, it has been that traditionally the choice in Northern Ireland has been that does Northern Ireland remain as it currently is within the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, or does it move to unity? Now, when the current position with the status quo is being destabilized, it doesn't mean that doesn't mean there's only now one choice, but they now need to look at, well, what is their alternative to unity? What is what they come up with in that one? Yeah, and that's, I mean, and therefore there's a lot of thinking to be done. Yeah. There's a lot of thinking to be done.
But you can see why they don't want to get into that, because as soon as they have a position, it's a game of inches, as you know, Derek. And
it is. Oh no, because they'll keep. And by the way, the standard accusation, if you go back to the early stages of the Good Friday Agreement, etc., was, well, the Irish government was trying to salami slice, which is, well, you just give us this, and we won't ask for anything else. And then as soon as you tell them, well, okay, look, we have that. Yeah. One more slice. So how do you steal a salami? One slice at a time. And so there is a legitimate fear of that. But the other side of that is unionism has to understand, like, what are its alternatives? Where is it going to? Where does it put? the next generation has got to decide, not every unionist is opposed to Europe. Not every young unionist sees Europe as the enemy. And that is often the portrayal that comes across from older unionist voices and from more established unionist voices. So there's a lot of complications within this.
Yeah.
And not every SNP person, although they stand for independence, a lot of SNP would have been traditional, would have come from unionist stock or the same stock as unionists in their own way, which is very independent minded. And they say their own position. So there are whole levels within this one. And I think far too many people are getting worked up over saying, stop talking about unity in the South, stop talking about border polls, stop talking all that conversation. And I go, no. Look, don't be using it to threaten people. Don't be using it to say, listen, Robert.
Doesn't it depend largely
on... Let's have the world of his mother is talking about this.
Why but doesn't it depend largely on the success of Brexit and financial...
What strange thing is that's why, like in terms of that's why the union's position on the Northern Ireland Protocol is weird, because it's the Northern Ireland Protocol should help Brexit to work if it worked properly, and they're actually debasing that, which they're actually saying, "No, this isn't working," which is kind of going, okay, yeah, but we always said it wouldn't work because we said Brexit wouldn't work. The people who have the greatest vested interest in making the Northern Ireland Protocol work is number one is the business community. And the business community that is largely represented by the unionist community.
Well, just speak in practical terms. I mean, is it London or Brussels? And is it Ursula or Boris at the moment? But I mean, that will obviously change.
Well, that's an extraordinary trend. The rest of it, I'm not too sure it's that stark because
just taking away all the religion and all the other stuff.
Oh no, but religion is only ever an identifier. It's not a source material. It's not a source of this. But again, to cut very quickly to the chase, which is in the 10 days' time, we're going to have the Scottish elections.
Yes.
And I just think we need to seriously look at how that's going to shape things and change things for the next couple of years. And how Scottish, and by the way, purely leave Northern Ireland out of it entirely. Ireland potentially has a new partner in Europe if this goes the way it should be going. And we have a new partner who come from very much the same approach that we do, the same understanding of the world as we do, the same understanding of relationships, of transatlantic relationships.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are huge positives in this for us as well.
Interesting.
But by the way, there's also we also have a direct competitor in terms of Scotland, in terms of looking for foreign direct investment, etc. So I mean, it's not all a yellow brick road.
Completely. And just I want to ask two questions. Is the North Sea oil money kind of dried up, or is that?
I think a lot of that is basically gone. The rest of it I think what's left with the reserves there. There is some coming in certainly, but I mean, also, Scotland has always argued that goes directly to Westminster. I think there was a new share out under Blair, but I just can't remember what that was. Yeah.
And the second question: is there voting on religious lines in Scotland? I mean, do Catholics and Protestants vote for SNPs without?
No, I don't think so. I think there would have been something a couple of years ago. I think the SNP tended to get more Protestants than Catholics for some reason. Right. Catholics tended to be more Labour, and particularly like if you look at where the kind of Catholic centres were, if you go to Glasgow, etc., and that tended to be more traditional Labour. But I think that's been the success of the SNP to get beyond a lot of its own origins, its own historical baggage.
Yeah.
But I certainly wouldn't have thought in the last 3 to 4 decades, 5 decades, there's been any big line of that.
A lot more difficult for Sinn Féin and stuff to lose their baggage, really, isn't it?
Well, again, which is you can look at. That's the other point I make in the article, which is if you want to compare, if you're going to kind of weigh pound for pound in terms of the ability to achieve your core ambition, the SNP is leaving Sinn Féin hanging. The SNP in 30 years had made independence not just a dominant issue in Scottish politics and in British national politics. It's now made it on the cusp of achieving it. That's not something you can say for Sinn Féin.
No. The Irish Examiner, Derek, Gardaí under threat due to filming. The Garda Representatives Association says officers have had home addresses and images shared, and image, singular, shared online.
It's I think but the article that kind of ends up talking about kind of body cameras, etc., which I think which is in everyone's interest, and particularly the Gardaí's interest for their own protection. The rest of it.
Yeah.
We've had, I think, 1 or 2 very unfortunate incidents where people have been filming Gardaí and threatening the rest, and we've had 1 or 2. Unfortunately, I think it was one very tragic situation from a Garda not too far from where I live, who just the pressure on him just became unbearable. So there are things around that. Look, these people are public servants. They're doing a job to protect us. They should not become so personalized. But unfortunately, the people they're dealing with are not doing this in kind of niceness and the rest of it. Everything must be personalized. So in terms of the Gardaí, I think we have an obligation. If we're going to send people into these situations, the state has an absolute obligation to them. And in those circumstances, the state has to protect them as much as it can.
Yeah, but
now,
I mean,
do I think necessarily that the idea of criminalizing somebody for recording something? I'm not too sure that.
I don't think you can put that back in the bottle. I mean,
no, you can't. You can't remove the technology, etc.
Derek Chauvin would have got off probably if there hadn't been.
Oh yeah, and that's it is that. But I think it's about the individual concerned, etc. So
they're also embarrassed by what people are seeing. There's a lot of behaviour from the guards that it's just on a completely
there is, but it's
abusive and authoritarian and kind of ignorant.
Is there really? Is there really individuals? I'm not too sure about that. I mean, has there been? I mean, look, in a situation like what's happened on Grafton Street, etc. Do some guards get carried away? Yeah. But look, their extreme provocation, that is not justifying it, but it puts it into a context. This doesn't happen outside of a context.
No.
So in that point of it, but in terms of when
the guards are aggressive, and if they're,
yeah, but they're also in situations where it can't just all be please and thank you.
But they're trained to deal with those situations. And sometimes
and by the way, I think there's a big question there in terms of their own training. Is this just a period you go through and just kind of that's it? That do you need to go back and etc.
Yeah,
and I think and therefore I think a lot of this comes down to how they are resourced, how they are backed up, how they're given the supports. And in terms of kind of just dropping fell in there and said, right now, there you go, that's you to go and protect that area.
Yeah, no.
I think in terms of that, in terms of senior Garda management, but also the state and their responsibility to the Gardaí. And I think that's the point that I think has to be kind of developed. Look, and again, policing changes. The nature of policing it's not so much changing, but it's modernizing. The technology changes as the rules of evidence change, the rest of it. And so it's these
many people feel that the police are the guards who are regulating these emergency regulations are going over or overreaching themselves.
They're overreaching, but are they overreaching because
they are these powers?
Let's kind of unpick that. Are they overreaching because they themselves have kind of
they're human
some kind of thing, or are they overreaching because the regulations themselves have never been clear? Are they overreaching because their applications haven't been clear? Is it overreaching because the Oireachtas or the people who never fully worked out the consequences of it? I think therefore there's a couple of layers in this. So the guards who themselves are overreaching, the guards who themselves are abusing their position, no problem. They got to be taken. They're not helping anyone else. But the rest of that, you can't expect the guards to carry the can for everyone else. And I think there are times when the state is far too often expecting the guards to carry the can for mistakes that were made much higher up.
Sure. But equally though, you can have some kid from Templemore asking, aggressively, where's your mask and stuff like, I mean, there's
yeah, but hang on a second. The regulations are clear. If you're we've seen a couple of videos of fellas been lifted off trains, etc. The one I saw, everyone was getting up indignant. They're going, hang on a second, what the hell do you expect the guy to do? The guard lifted your man off. No, he didn't. No, he lifted him physically. Now, in fairness, your guy's foot didn't touch the ground, but he didn't kick him. He didn't beat him. He didn't assault him. That was the issue. And your man was been given a clear.
I know, but it was a public health measure, and he's carrying a guy like.
But at the end of the day, who were the people who were cheering in the background? It was the people, the ordinary citizens in the carriage who turned around and said, "We're just fed up. We've had to live with this." I mean, I hear horror stories. I'm sure you do, in terms of what's going on in the public transport, in terms of abuse of drivers, abuse of staff, etc.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a recognition that if you're going to do this kind of stuff, well, then there is something going to happen. And if you're going to put a guard in that situation, you have to protect their judgment. Now, where they make egregiously wrong judgments, where they make egregiously wrong, or where they decide that they themselves are the arbiter of everything. That's it. But when you see a guard kind of say, look, you get off now, come on, you're off now. And your man's just getting out, your man's kind of going, yeah, there's nothing you can do about it. And the guard saying, okay, well, there actually is something I can do about it. Yeah. And it's going to happen now. So, there is reasonable.
None of that is good, though, is it?
Well, welcome to the big bad world. Not everyone out there this isn't Disneyland out there, it's.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay.
I mean, it's
Being a snowflake, I suppose. Yeah,
no, it's
no,
not a snowflake. It's kind of it is. There is a judgment call on these things. I mean, there is a point where there is a tipping point. But I mean, again, which is like there is no excuse for a guard abuse, and I think certainly from my understanding, and I would deal with the guard from few bits of business, the rest of it. Certainly, everyone I see in the rest of it are guys who are common sense, copped on, and recognize the limits of that, and they want to go home at the end of the night. They don't want to be caught up in this stuff. They don't want to.
yeah.
But they also see that if they keep walking away, it just gets worse. Yeah.
And then there's a few others who you give them the power and they'll abuse it. I mean, the Stanford experiment.
But yeah, theoretically, but I've yet to see how all these people. I might not say they don't exist.
No,
I mean, again, talk to any Dubliner about this, and they'll eventually come up about Lugs Brannigan. Now, I remember Lugs Brannigan. I've never fallen foul with the man, and I think when I was knocking around, the guy was damn nearly retired. Yeah. But which is where he boxed you. He gave you a box in the head. No, and that was the end of it. Now, that is not what I was advocating. That is not. But there's a certain degree, which is there has to be. The guards do require authority. And that authority comes from the state, and they do need to have that.
It doesn't just come from the state, it comes from us, really.
But it comes to that. When the state is elected, that is a democratic process. We are a democratic state. There is accountability. There are levels of this. There are accountability through the Iraq. There's accountability through the courts.
But they see themselves as servants of the state, rather.
And the media is part of this as well.
Yeah. Well, you won't see a kind of proper analysis of the guards because the press won't go there.
I'm not absolutely certain about that. It's true, but what I will grant you is,
the Charlton Tribunal told us that. I think
there is but
they're all in the same jobs as well. None of these guys moved on. They're still.
No, there is, and by the way, and you can talk about what happened in Cavan Monaghan with the sergeant who I'm having a bad night tonight remembering people's names. But I do accept that, and a lot of this is reporting on things that happened 20, 30 years ago, and it hasn't all changed. I do accept that it hasn't all changed. What I was about to say was, I think one of the mistakes we made for ourselves was in the time of the PSNI and the reforms made in Northern Ireland is that we said, no, that none of this applies to the South. I think that was a big mistake. Yeah. And the more I look back, I realize that was a massive mistake. Yeah. Not because the PSNI is an exemplar, but I think putting that level of scrutiny, examination, and recognizing that the tenets of policing that should be applied, and that policing is by consent, that should have been more kind of brought into the thing.
Right.
And I think
that was probably the thinking behind taking on Drew, wasn't it? Bring a bit of that stuff down.
I suspect that was more to do with just what was happening inside in Garda headquarters and just a whole. I'm not even going to go there because I don't think your lawyers or my lawyers could handle what if I went on to the next sentence.
Yeah, but I think, like you say, when the RUC was changed, the guards should have.
What they do is because there was a root and branch examination of the RUC, but it actually started at the bottom up. Well, how do you build confidence in policing? How do you allow communities who have not accepted the police, have always seen the police as the other, not merely an outside force, as the other? And I think that approach in large parts of Dublin would have worked. I think that's, in terms of how did the Gardaí handle the early stages of the rise of drug dealing in Dublin, the degree to which, but how much of this was ghettoized, how much of this was driven into certain communities and just let's protect that around there. I'm not looking at this through rose-tinted glasses.
No, I know. I appreciate that. You've always been fair on that. So the GA clubs forced to delay return due to COVID.
Yeah. Now, this one, I didn't actually, strange enough, I actually looked earlier, but I didn't actually look at that one properly. Which appears to be an extraordinary story. Because I think was something about it is in terms of the training going on, but actually, what are they training for? Because what's the point in having intensive training if you're not actually producing for competitions, etc.?
Right. Yeah. These are kind of clubs in East Cork, West Waterford, and North.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the resumption of underage training started yesterday.
And there was something deferred by a week.
Okay.
There was an outbreak because I see. Well, yeah. It is a very immediate problem. Sorry, I thought this was a more broadly thing. I think this is quite an immediate,
quite
specific to the area concerned. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, murder, suicide, bereaved, joint mental health campaigns.
Yeah. That was just horrendous case.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
choose to roll out Happy Jays, over 50s get one shot Johnson and Johnson vaccine.
Yeah.
Would people be given a choice, Derek?
My understanding is no. I think you take the vaccine you're given, but it's based on the guidelines. No, I thought the Taoiseach's remark about if you don't take the vaccine you're given, you go to the back of the queue was a particularly petulant one.
Yeah.
I just that's in nobody's interests, but however, that you don't want people basically they're saying, oh, sorry, coming up, no, if it's not that one, I'm not having it, and then squandering the vaccine when somebody else will take it. But I think you can't have people kind of saying, well, listen, it's not that you can't have. I don't think the capacity is there for people to say, well, I'll have Johnson & Johnson, I'll have vaccine, I'll have AstraZeneca, because it seems consistently that one of the big problems the HSE is facing is the databases. How are they managing this data processing, etc.? And why is so much of it done through GPs? Because most GPs have really good databases. And I said earlier, like, I'm due to get my vaccine. I know exactly what days I'm going to get it. I know I'm going to get Pfizer. Because my GP has said to me, listen, we're doing a clinic every 2 weeks. Here's the dates. Here's your time. That's what's going to happen. And I know I'm going to get Pfizer. So when he has an extremely good database, as most local GP practices tend to have.
Right.
And it seems that the HSE will also now. I didn't test. I mean, whether if he had said to me, I get AstraZeneca, I would have said, okay, fair enough, I'll take AstraZeneca. It's no big deal. But I'm not too sure how you test the water. And said, if I don't take AstraZeneca, he comes back and says, well, look, I don't expect to get Pfizer for 2 weeks, but I'll put you on that list. And I'm going to move somebody else up the list. I'm sure that's manageable. So I felt the Taoiseach's remark was just going to go, oh, to hell with it.
Really crass. But what's
you can't be shouting from the rooftops, we have concerns about AstraZeneca. And by the way, you must take it.
Yeah, I know.
It just seems strange. And no, I'm sure. I think he felt he got himself off the hook. He said, well, look, I'll take AstraZeneca. Yeah, but don't tell everyone else that you have to go to the back of the queue. I mean,
what's the situation with Martin? Can he not intervene in when Varadkar goes off like that?
That's a really good question. And to which the answer is yes, he can as Taoiseach, but it seems to be the answer seems to be no, he can't as a revolving Taoiseach.
Because it does separate Fine Gael kind of from Fianna Fáil, doesn't it?
It is, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I personally think one of the most egregiously bad examples of this was a couple of weeks ago, Simon Harris, about the hospital quarantining when he went on to Claire Byrne and saying, oh, well, we should have known this beforehand, this should have been done, this should have been sorted out 2 weeks ago. And you're going to go, well, you were at the goddamn cabinet meeting. Did you what the hell? I mean, okay, fair enough. Were you busy on TikTok at that particular moment? Were you filming somebody through a window? I mean, like, how would they able to go? But this kind of constant running commentary.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, I am highly critical of Micheál Martin. But there are moments you're saying, listen, will you stop being the nice guy and doing the decent thing and doing the right thing and just turn around and tell do a Lugs Brannigan and just tell the two of them, listen, get your act together or go take a swivel.
Yeah.
It is bizarre.
It is. Maybe it's because he does look like the only adult now in the room. You know, they're all TikToking and he's kind of, you know.
Yeah, but the problem is he looks like. I think there is a limit to which he does look like the only adult. But the problem is he's still an analog adult and they're digital ones, which is he's still missing a lot of the stuff. I mean,
but look how cringy the digital stuff is. Like, look how the TikTok. And then everybody kind of, you're great, Simon, you're the best, and it's really cringy. And if you've, you know,
this is a debasing of politics because it's turning around that politics is now purely about who can have the nicest message and who can have the space photograph and do a desk. And I can go, no. And I got this picture from this 12-year-old somewhere and I go, oh, jeez, you and the 12-year-old can go on. Anyway.
Okay.
Meanwhile.
So the Echo very, very pro lockdown, everything. Gatherings are still a risk.
Yeah. In fairness, I don't think it's a statement on their behalf. I think it's actually reporting what the mayor has said in terms of gatherings of people. So I think it's a quote rather than the mayor. The Echo's absolutely hard for hard.
I know you're right. No, I'm being a bit mean, but they're very finger wagging. They're kind of the young people. What are the young people up to there?
Oh, well, there's a certain thing, and I'm sure, I don't know what the Echo's audience is, but I wouldn't imagine it's probably a novel on 17 and 18-year-olds in Cork.
Yeah, Dan was saying that it's like, you know.
Yeah. It's attracting to it. It knows its audience.
It does. I had the mail arrived. Sorry, just one second.
That's what it is.
Just give me 1 second here. Sorry.
I feel there's a bit of a Wells Fargo thing there. The mail got safely through.
Yeah, I know.
That's actually, I know that, sorry, just pointless references and the rest of it, which is, there's a great story. My dad used to tell us, my dad saw blind, he was there at the time, but we know full blind he wasn't. But there was a great character called Bang Bang, whose real name I can't remember.
Yeah.
We used to go up and down, particularly up and down Mead Street and Thomas Street, Thomas Street, not Mead Street, Thomas Street on the buses, and when they were the open platform buses. But the story goes that he was swinging out of the back of the bus with the big key, shooting people as he's going past. And whatever way the bus juddered to a halt. And he lost his grip and he fell off. He fell off the platform and hit the ground, and the bus drove on. And this crowd had gathered around him. And he eventually gets himself up to one elbow and says, "Don't mind me, save the stagecoach, save the stagecoach."
Brilliant. That's fantastic.
I don't know. Could well be a apocryphal, yeah.
No, I'm sure it was. It's mad. Everybody met him. Like everybody.
Oh no, people who it's a bit like the GPO in 1916. Everyone was there, but they weren't. I mean, having said that, no, there's a guy when we used to have a small hotel and a bar. And one of the barmen who worked for us, he only worked part-time, but he actually brought in something one day. It was this big envelope he brought it in. He put it up behind the bar counter. It was sitting behind the bar for about 2 years. And he had looked after Bang Bang in his latter years. And he had his old big iron key.
Gun.
And he had it framed. And it was Bang Bang's gun was on the thing. And it was just hung behind our bar for about 2 years. I was raising the rest of it. No, as soon as Danny left the key, well, he wasn't in. But it became a great conversation, Chris, and a great kind of chat piece, and the rest of behind the bar counter. Lovely man.
And
lovely.
Isn't there a cafe called Bang Bang? Is there? They opened named after him?
No, that's a very expensive restaurant, the American Row. I think it's something to do with Thai. I don't think it's that.
No. No, there is a coffee place.
You could well be.
Not to a Bang restaurant. Named after Bang. No, but there's a coffee.
That would be a great story for taximan. Oh yeah, that restaurant's named after.
They lost the name. They lost the second Bang.
The second part of off there, you know, man. Anyway.
Okay, I've got the mail up. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, this is only Coca-Cola. It's not Flat Guinness or anything like that.
Oh, that's a pity.
Actually, it isn't Coca-Cola. It's actually Pepsi. I know the brands are available. Anyway.
Have you had a draft pint yet?
No, I haven't, and I haven't actually been tempted. So basically, we got a takeaway the other night, and they kind of do things that we can supply pints from the rest of us. And I thought, but do I want them or not? And I said no, because I have a cup. Like every so often, I have a beer at home, but I'm not big into drinking at home.
All right.
Never
and
have
the plastic cups service.
Yeah, I know. I kind of do want to wait. I will. When there is kind of outdoor dining and the rest of it, which hopefully is not too far off, then I will have a pint outside. But not just at the moment. I don't fancy getting this in a plastic cup and send it on the side of the road.
No, being photographed by, press photography.
Oh Jesus, yeah.
So this is the. Mail, same basically the J&J jab approved and.
Well, it is, and the important thing with the J&J jab is, which is, I think we're due to get around 600,000 doses between now and the end of June, beginning of July. And that 600,000 doses is the equivalent of 1.2 million of Pfizer, because it's a single dose vaccine.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're getting 600,000 doses, you can vaccinate 600,000 people. Now, as far as I know, there is going to be a slight delay in the pipeline, but it shouldn't bring it too far into July, I wouldn't have thought.
Okay.
Because I think if you looked at the government's figures when they released them there in response to prime time, it looked like they were going to get 4 million vaccines in April, May, and June.
Yeah.
From which you vaccinate, 2.3 million people. That gets you well beyond your 80% at the end of June. Now, a lot of that's going to be dragged back into July. So it depends how far back into July.
2.3, does it not include children, no?
No. At the moment, they're looking at adults. I think they are. I think at some point they will step forward to kind of vaccinating 16-year-old. I don't know. I can't remember the age cohort thereafter. But yeah, they will.
The 80%, they meant 80%
of adults. Yeah, herd immunity is roughly defined as 6. It depends on who you talk to. It's either 60, 65, 70, 75, or 80% of the adult population.
Right.
Particularly with COVID, because adults tend to get it more seriously, but also spread it more easily, and children tend not to. Whatever.
Will we be able to meet ever, Derek? Because I'll be unvaccinated, you'll be vaccinated, and
no. Look,
never the twain.
We'll put you. We'll look. Like
I'm going in that puddle again.
No. That's it. I intend Well, the thing about it is that you've more to fear from me than I have to fear from you. But
Apparently,
yeah.
you're shedding mRNA.
Well, as I said, look, you can get an awful sting from a dying wasp. And what was I about to say? I was about to say something profound. That's going out of my head.
But
there is, which is, I'm sure we will, because I mean, there will be a point where this does. I mean, like in the past, I haven't had the flu vaccine, and I didn't get it for years and years. I never caught the flu either. So, I mean, there is a point where this becomes a reasonable chance, etc.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, but I think the point is, what is that point? Is that September? Is it October? Is it early next year or whatever? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think not getting getting vaccinated on a point of principle. There's a certain point where, are you doing it just for pig iron, which is, well, everyone else, the rest of the world's been vaccinated. Whatever number of people have died because of the vaccine, and you say, well, no, I still don't believe it. I mean, at what point?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm a massive conspiracy theorist, as you know. I mean,
don't I know? Yeah, I mean, like,
I'm a tinfoil.
The price of tinfoil where you're living, yeah.
Oh, and I really don't. I mean, I cannot believe what's happening. You know, if you want them personally, I mean,
yeah.
As I say again and again, all broadsheet readers, most of them, about 5% maybe, are totally with you, Derek, and with with the restrictions and whatnot. So I have to keep my personal views, but my personal view is that, it's as bad as possible. You know, I
don't get it. I genuinely don't get this. I genuinely don't understand that. But having said that, which is, I think what will become a difficulty is travel. I think travel will become a problem without vaccinations. I think airlines will not be prepared to take the risk. Now, by the way, I also, and the other point we have to recognize, which is we're going to be wearing face masks in public transport for a long time to come. I think I said to you, like when I flew over to see my mother twice last year, I think it's the only time I remember getting on and off a plane and didn't get off with a goddamn cold or something, some kind of bug. Because every other time I'm on a plane, I come off with a chest infection or something. Yeah. I'm wearing the bloody mask. Okay, the fact that there's 8 people on the plane probably also helped.
Probably did.
But that's it. So, but I think that is going to be an issue, which is traveling. It will be a problem for people. Now, traveling across Europe and driving across the border is one thing, but getting on a plane and going across water will be an issue.
Yeah. Well, traveling had become really horrible anyway, really, hadn't it? Yeah. And
absolutely.
For it to become more horrible. Yeah, but everybody's attacking conspiracy theories at the moment. I mean, you know, your families breaking up over it and all that, but
you would argue that people are also breaking up over the stress of it, and people dying because of people losing family and relatives, because people are in nursing homes. There's a whole range of, a lot of things are happening at the same time. It's not all down to the same cause.
Yeah, I mean, I actually had to resist in a way personally. Like, how do you, if you felt like this was something possibly genocidal was at work, what would you do, Derek? I mean, would you? I know.
You can't just feel it. You can't just.
Oh no. But if
you need to have evidence for it, you need.
No, but if you felt
based on some science.
Yeah, but if you hypothetically, this is a hypothesis. It's not even a theory, Derek.
Yeah.
If you felt that, how would you react? I mean, if you felt that, yeah, this is not good, that they are trying to cull, they're trying to.
Yeah. But again, which is the problem.
But also socially engineer us all into not being.
Do we say? I mean, I do accept that there are lone wolves who do eventually cop on to things that other people didn't, and I do understand that there are fellas deep in the bells. And if you go back to, what was your man's name? Not before Watergate, the one before that, the Pentagon Papers and the rest of Daniel Ellsberg. I do understand that there are people there are whistleblowers. I do get that. I do understand that. But they have evidence. They have something to support that. It can't just be that. I'm not sure about these fellas. I think it has to be based more than that. And I think in something that the nature of this, that there will be others kind of come forward. I mean, that there are. I mean, there is no shortage of people who are making these claims, but their evidence never stands up. It never stands up to real scrutiny.
You mean
medics, etc. People who turn around and say, "Well, no, the vaccines aren't doing this; it's doing that." I mean, there's claims. Yeah. But they aren't standing up to major scrutiny, and which is, do I think there's a massive conspiracy?
Well, we can't. I mean, if this was a more successful show, we'd probably be cancelled for what I've just said.
Yeah.
On YouTube. So when you say that, like, where is this evidence? Nobody is even allowed kind of finish their first sentence.
No, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. I mean, that there are. I mean,
I've seen a bunch. I've seen a lot of evidence that would make me look. I don't want to be fear mongering because that's what RTÉ's job is, but I don't want to fear on the other way.
Yeah.
Yet it's a conversation worth happening or worth having because whilst you're not persuaded by any evidence at the moment, it does seem to be the preoccupation of these people who are behind the vaccines.
Yeah, but who are the people behind the vaccines? Is it the pharmaceutical companies? Is it
pharmaceutical? Yeah, I mean, well,
World Health Organization. I mean, how big does this conspiracy get? I mean,
no. It's not about it's about a worldview. Like you look upon you feel that sterilizing a certain population might help.
But okay, let me argue the case in reverse to you, which is if this was a worldview, if this was a certain conspiratorial thing, why would you start in Europe? Why would you start in Africa? Why would you start in America? Why would you start in Europe? Why would you go for those countries, like Japan and the Middle East, to vaccinate the most numbers? If you want to do the most damage, you do it in South America. You do it in Africa. You do it in China. You do it the rest of it. I just think in terms of the actual to stack it up, even as a theory, even as it collapses in and on itself. Would be my own view on this.
Well,
because I think I have spent the last couple of weeks lambasting the government for not getting vaccines out quick enough and not doing the rest. Let me now argue against myself and saying I think the great problem we're going to have in 3, 6, 9 months' time is why we didn't vaccinate enough people in Africa, why we were so slow to get the vaccines out to the third world or to the developing world or to newer countries. I think that's going to be the big problem. A friend of mine is in South Africa, who does a very nice job, good job there. He reckons he's not going to get vaccinated till October.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's I think they're going to be our issues in September, October. But therefore, if you were trying to do as much damage, you were trying to do this kind of
Malthusian catastrophe.
Yeah, that I would have thought that if you wanted to run the vaccines out and kind of basically experiment on a lot of people, you wouldn't be doing it in Europe, you wouldn't be doing it in Ireland, UK, Israel, and the rest of it. You'd be doing it much further afield. I just put it forward as a kind of an alternative view.
Yeah. No, it's and it's not the right place because, as I say, people watching support the.
I think both people watching it have gone.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it does get a few.
We should actually get through the papers.
Yes, sir. I know.
Oh, brilliant. Passport backlog. Brilliant. Oh, no, that isn't that. Actually, this is actually becoming a big issue. I was surprised. Who the hell was it? My mother rang me the other day with somebody saying that they can't get a passport and kind of, what can I do? And I go, hang on, it's 14 years to work for the government. I haven't a note. But I actually hadn't comped just how bad that backlog, because I got my passport due to be renewed in 2019 and I got it renewed and all the rest and done about 6 months beforehand. But I can understand for a lot of people, particularly for a lot of people, this is their one means of identification, etc. And the fact that this has been nothing's been happening for so long, I just didn't realize how big a problem it was. And the same way I know, talking with somebody recently about visas, for people for family reunification, the rest of just how much stuff has been held up in the Department of Foreign Affairs and Department of Justice. I mean, that these are problems.
Well, that's a good news story then, that in the Irish world, it's Bernard Purcell's.
Well, it is, and it has been a big issue, and it is kind of but it's still saying 6 to 8 weeks to be cleared up. So that means you're still putting that into June, July. Yeah,
sorry, I didn't realize it was so late that we got rabbiting. Were you watching the Oscars last night, Derek?
I wasn't, no, and I was about to watch it now. Actually, I tell you what I was watching before you came on there was the Newsnight, because I think they were coming through the UK papers now, and that not saying Johnson's in trouble, but by heavens, Cummings really has his bits and pieces in a vice.
Yeah.
And if it's not the leaks, if it's not the commentary about bodies piling up, which I suspect Johnson didn't say. I don't
think he said it, no.
Yeah, I don't personally think he said it in the rest of it. I think it might have, the words might have been used, but might have been, I don't think the context is right there. However, the refurbishment of the flat is a problem. And people who understand these things are telling me that he's already banged to rights, even on his own version of it. Because he's repaying money, but that money should never have been done in the first place, etc. So that he does have a lot of problems.
There's nothing new in the sense that we knew that would about Boris.
Well, the thing about this is all back to the Tory sleaze stuff. This is back to the bad old days. This is back to
the flat doesn't really do it for me. You know, I mean, the other stuff. Yeah,
well, the thing about it is, it is where there's a paper trail and the rest of it. And a point was made on Newsnight, which was, look, well, how does this play where people are struggling to get by? People are struggling during the lockdown. People are struggling to cope with the rest of it. Yeah. And he has business people paying to redo the number 10 flat. No, he can't pick the flat up and leave without them.
No.
So this isn't that it becomes his own property. So so if Keir Starmer becomes Prime Minister in 4 or 5 years.
I think most people would see that as well, Derek.
I'm not too sure. I just think there is a certain element of getting caught and backpedaling.
Well, there seems to be a momentum against him.
There is, but I think the Dominic Cummings stuff could be very dead, because Cummings, I read his blog there the other day, his post and the rest of it, and it is very menacing, it's very threatening, and it's basically saying, I'm not talking to any more journalists because I'm going to the House of Commons committee when I give evidence in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm going to tell them everything.
Jesus.
So we'll see. I mean,
if you're going to have an enemy, let it be a creep like that guy, you know. I mean,
it is. Having said that, the problem is that, I mean, it's that whole thing about you knew I was a snake when you picked me up. So I mean, they couldn't put him into the place of picking up the rest of it. So,
well, they both deserve each other in a way.
Oh no, that's the one joy of it. Yeah, absolutely.
It's the one pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So again, it's Johnson hits back.
Yeah, it is. But I think that you're going to see this dominating. Interesting point is election 10 days to go, all the stuff playing, etc. Scottish elections, Welsh elections, local elections.
Yeah,
this is the timing of this is prime in tainted by sleaze, say voters.
Yeah, that's it. It's just tainted rather than a kind of it's a collection of stuff, isn't it? And
it is.
But back to Darius Guppy and threatening, you know,
I do think I do accept the point, which is some of this is baked in. The rest of people don't believe he's a saint. They don't believe he's going around doing good deeds by stealth late at night. But I also think that there is. It's just a bit too egregious, and he's been could well be just caught on the wrong side of too many things too quickly. And it's not that Labour will bring him down. It's not that the newspapers will bring him down. It's not that anyone outside. The only people who bring him down are the Tories. And there could well be just that kind of confluence of a couple of different interests. And the moment they think he's not going to win them, or he's vote damaging, Tories are absolutely ruthless. And
they're ruthless, yeah.
And he came in by the sword, and he'll go by the sword, yeah.
Well, if they pick Gove, I don't think they'll win an election with Gove.
Oh God, no! But the thing about Rishi Sunak was probably hoping this will hold off for a while, because he hasn't come out well of the Cameron thing.
But isn't he involved in the Cameron thing now?
Yeah, he took so many calls on Cameron and on the Greenshill, Young and the rest of it. But Sunak seems to be. I mean, Gove, mother of God! I mean, that is definitely going from a rat to a slug. I mean, that is. I mean, you could not go if you need to go to an amoeba. You need to go seriously down the file to get to find something worse than Gove.
This is New York Times kind of.
The Indian thing is, which is the kind of India's Trump. What reminds Modi. I mean, it's just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And the indifference by which the Indian government is treating this, and kind of saying nothing to see here.
Yeah.
And India is not it's a populous country. It's a country of not huge wealth, but it is a country with a massive infrastructure. It's a country that has developed hugely in the last few decades. It's a country with a large burgeoning middle class. So this isn't some backwater, doesn't it? I mean, it's just the scale of this. And I think that they could, and like Ben Modi has been kind of this massive politician for a long time, a cross between Putin and Trump, etc. And massive, again, when people were talking about Trump on social media, people say, no, actually look at what Modi's been doing. That's serious. That's serious example of it. Anyway, there we go.
Okay. Finally, then the star. Johnson, my pants are not on fire.
Yeah.
Anyway. And Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah, excellent. Again, which is I was trying to follow this, and I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it is. I mean, that's the guy who passed away.
Chadwick Boseman.
Chadwick Boseman. He couldn't decide that he's not winning it, but I hadn't realized that, of course, they'd actually reversed the order of the awards, so that it wasn't best movie was the last award. It was best actor. And it looked as if the Oscar authorities were building up to this big denouement and Chadwick Boseman, and then end on this. But somebody else, I don't know who it was, I watched online or somebody pointed out and said, yeah, but this should actually restore your confidence in the Oscars, Because it's clear the producers didn't know who won it. They were prepared to bet, but they actually didn't know the voting. That the voting system isn't rigged, because they had assumed that he would. And in fairness, now when Anthony Hopkins won the award, the first thing he did is pay tribute to Chadwick Boseman. He kind of, obviously he had seen the betting as well as everyone else, which was, didn't see himself as a likely winner. It was going to be that the emotion was going to go with Boseman. But
not since Jethro Tull beat Metallica at the Grammys in 1993 has there been such a...
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that myself. No, the last time I watched the Grammys, Sinatra won an award. That's the only time I watch. If it's not Sinatra, Dean Martin, or Elvis Fitzgerald, I don't care.
The Rat Pack. And the Rat Liquor Pack. You know, with the...
No, we'll let that one pass. That was just really, really stretching there. Go
on. Derek, thanks so much. And,
no, but bank holiday next Monday, so I will be...
See you Monday week.
Yeah.